She attended catacomb services rarely and carefully. So because they were being persecuted, a lot of the church went underground. They were called the catacomb church. They would serve liturgy in secret. And she would rarely go to those services. And if she did, she went carefully, because they would follow her to try and find out where these church services were held so they can break them up. The GPU, which later on became the KGB, but in those days it was called the GPU, Secret Police, knew that members of the catacomb church existed in the diocese where the lumber yard was, but they could find no way of uncovering and arresting them. In order to uncover those who had not yet been arrested, the GPU, Secret Police, suddenly returned from exile Bishop Andrew, who was deeply revered by the people and by the entire catacomb church, the secret church. What they wanted to do is bring him there so that people can come to him, and then they would follow when he would go to do services in secret and collect the ones who were still leading Orthodox lives. At the bishop's direction, he was received openly by only one church in Ufa, although secretly the whole diocese came to him. The GPU was wrong. Instead of being uncovered, the catacomb church deepened and spread, remaining all the while inaccessible to spies. The GPU, convinced of the failure of its plan, again arrested Bishop Andrew and returned him to exile. Lydia was arrested in July 1928. The Secret Operations Department had been looking for the typist who had been supplying the workers of the Forestry Department with typewritten brochures containing lives of saints, prayers, and the sermons and instructions of ancient and contemporary hierarchs. So someone was typing up lives of saints, prayers, and distributing them secretly. We don't need to do it secret today. And yet we don't distribute. We should distribute. Give people lives of saints, especially. Talks, whatever. Beneficial things. It had been noticed that the lower stem of the letter K was broken on the typist's typewriter. They examined the writing and they noticed the K was something wrong with it. And they checked all the typewriters, and what did they discover? Lydia's typewriter was the one that they were looking for. The GPU understood that a clue for uncovering the whole catacomb church had fallen into their hands. 10 days of uninterrupted questioning did not break the martyr, who simply refused to say anything. On July the 20th, the interrogator, having lost all patience, gave Lydia over to the Special Command for interrogation. So what's this Special Command? This Special Command worked in a corner room in the cellar of the GPU headquarters. A permanent guard was stationed in the cellar corridor. On this day, the guard was Kirill, a 23-year-old private. He saw Lydia as she was brought into the cellar, heading towards that room. And that special command room was where they really, really tortured them. The preceding 10 days of questioning had drained the martyr's strength, and she could not go down the steps. Private Ataev, Kirill, at the command of his superiors, was asked to help her and lead her down to the interrogation room. Then Lydia said, "May Christ save you," sensing a spark of compassion for her in the gentleness of the Red Army Guard's strong arms. Saint Lydia felt that as he was helping her, but he was just obeying his orders, she felt in his soul that there was something there, that he wasn't just a hard-hearted, communist army person, but there was something there. There was a spark. Because remember that a lot of people, their faith was extinguished by the communists. They weren't allowed to go to church, a lot of them, and they really killed a lot of souls. And most of them were very hard, irreligious, horrible. But what she noticed is that she felt spiritually there's something there. And she said, may Christ save you. The martyr's words, with her eyes full of pain and confusion, fell into his heart. Now he could no longer listen with indifference to her endless screams and cries as he had previously listened to the same cries from others being questioned and tortured. So he was hard. Before that, he was stationed in front of the door and he could hear they were torturing people. He didn't care. He didn't feel anything. But now, because of his contact with Saint Lydia, he changed and he no longer was indifferent to the pains and the screams. Lydia was tortured for a long time. The GPU tortures were usually done in a way that did not leave noticeable marks on the body of the tortured, but at Lydia's questioning, no attention was paid to this. They didn't care. They just really, really tortured her, not caring what they did to her. Lydia's screams and cries continued almost without interruption for more than 1.5 hours. So one of the torturers said, aren't you in pain? You're screaming and crying. Does that mean it's painful, like sarcastic, etc., whatever? And then she answered, painful, Lord, how painful, replied Lydia with a broken moan. Then why don't you talk? It will be even more painful, said the confused torturers. Why don't you talk? Why don't you give us the information? If you don't give us the information, we're going to inflict more pain on you. And they were confused because they couldn't understand how she was able to endure without saying anything. They wanted her to betray. Where are these catacomb churches? Who believes and things like that? And then she says, I cannot talk. I cannot. He will not allow it, groaned Lydia. And then they said, who will not allow it? God will not allow it. The torturers thought up something new for the martyr, sexual assault. There were 4 of them. 1 more was needed. So they called the guard Kirill, who was outside the door, to help. When Kirill entered the room and saw Lydia, he understood the means of her further torture. And he understood his role in this, that they wanted him to participate in this sexual assault or to help or hold it down or whatever. Kirill's whole soul was repelled by this satanic abomination. Totally unaware of what he was doing, Kirill killed the 2 torturers who stood before him on the spot with his own revolver, his gun. Before even the second shot had echoed, the GPU man who had been standing behind Kirill hit him on the head with the handle of his gun. Kirill had just enough strength to turn and grab his attacker by the throat, but a shot from the 4th soldier knocked him to the floor. Remember, there was 4 soldiers. Kirill fell with his head toward Lydia, who was stretched out with cords. She was tied up. The Lord gave him the opportunity of hearing once more from the martyr words of hope. And looking straight into Lydia's eyes, Kirill, blood gushing from him, gasped out his union with the Lord. Saint, take me with you. I will take you, said Lydia, smiling radiantly. This conversation opened a door to the other world, and terror darkened the consciousness of the 2 remaining GPU men who were there. They lost it. With insane shouts, they began to shoot the helpless victims who threatened them, and they shot until both of their revolvers had been emptied. In other words, they lost their minds, and they started shooting into Lydia and Kirill. It was as if they were being threatened. How could they be threatened? One was already shot, Lydia was tied up, What threatened them? The whole experience, the repentance, that knocked them out.
Επαντήτω, ποτίς δεσποτή.